It is so exciting to join you all. I am thrilled for this opportunity. Yeah.
Not half as much as we are. Thank you so much. I know it's Sunday and you've got all your life and everything going on Sunday. So thank you for joining us, giving us some of your precious time.
To be here. Wonderful to be here. Yeah.
Go ahead and ask your question.
So, Cornelius, our first question is, what can you tell us that no one or hardly anyone knows about you?
That hardly anyone knows? I actually love spending time alone. And I think a lot of people know that. I'm in front of kids, every day. But I love spending time alone. And in my alone time, I am quite the master Lego builder. Not very many people know about that. But that feels like a normal thing. But here's the thing. I am so good at Legos. Well, I'm bragging here, but I think I'm so good. But I build things, and so I meet people in life, and I'm like, oh, I think Christina might need a house, and I'll build her one. But Christina might never know. And so I've built Lego things for people who might not even know that I've built them. But sometimes if I find myself thinking about a person, I'll just say, hey, this person needs a spaceship, and so it'll be Christina's spaceship, but in my Lego attic.
That is so cool.
It is absolutely art.
Yeah. So I built custom Lego things for people who might not even know that I've built custom Lego things for.
Well, do you ever take a picture though and send it to them and say, here is your house? Because I personally would like a spaceship, but they might not know.
And and it feels kind of weird because I thought about that at one point. And it all started I had a really good mentor who would tell me things. And when he would teach me things, I would build things for him. But then I was kind of afraid to tell him about it, and so then it became my secret, and then I started building things for more people, and so I have a secret armada of things that I've built for people that I love, and I don't know if they know.
That is cool. And do you keep them all, or do you dismantle them to make new stuff?
Most of them I keep because they're kind of keepsakes. Then they become oh, here's the spaceship that I built, and it reminds me of that moment, or it reminds me of that person. And so sometimes when I miss that person, I now have their spaceship. Or
I've just fallen in love with this whole thing.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
It's that. And here's the fun part about it. Of course I have kids, so I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And the 6-year-old, her name is Soleil, and she often comes down and she's like, Daddy, what are you doing? And so she's joined in. And so I have a co-conspirator now.
Which is important in secret missions.
Yeah. So we build secret things. Our last project, we built a rhinoceros for her teacher.
Wow.
And again, her teacher does not know. So yeah. So there's a rhinoceros for Miss J. So Miss J, if you're watching this,
the rhinoceros out?
No.
What is that?
Should I edit the rhinoceros information out?
That's the world's first secret from me. I guess we can leave it in.
Okay. Oh, I'm just delighted by the whole thing. I'm just happy for the day now. Okay, so the next thing is, before we start the game, you have given us a word that troubles or annoys you.
Yes.
And that word is this.
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
Should we dig into this a little bit? About...
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What is it about? This word is everywhere.
No, I know. Yeah. It's, mainly because it's not enough. I think in a society that has been defined by excluding others, simple acknowledgement that other people exist to me isn't enough. And for me, diversity feels statistical. It feels numeric. Hey, I've got a gay person, I've got a black person, I've got an Asian person, and just that acknowledgement just feels wimpy. And so I kind of say diversity is for wimps. I'm really into full-on inclusion. That it's not enough to acknowledge that other people exist, but we really have to do both the intellectual and the physical labor of including people. So what does it mean to not just welcome my Asian friend, or welcome my black friend, or welcome my Jewish friend, or welcome my disabled friend to my organization, or to my home, or to my neighborhood, but what does it mean to reconfigure my organization, or restructure my organization, or my neighborhood, or my home in order to allow for that person to be who they truly are? So I'm more into the verb include. A lot of people get really happy when they've met their diversity numbers, or they get really happy when they've had their diversity event. But you see these organizations having diversity events, but then they fail to change. And so if your diversity does not change you, then you're oppressive. And so I've grown quite tired. I'm even at the point now where I tell people who ask me to come speak places, I'm like, I don't really do diversity. That's
Yeah.
not my thing. So
Yeah.
if you want to get together and celebrate the fact that you flew a black eye in, then that's not really my event. But if you want to get together and think about how do we look at all of the wonderful people that we've assembled here, and how do we make sure that this is an organization where each one of those people can thrive, that's my work. And I feel like that's really, really important. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. I feel, as a teacher, I especially feel it because,
Yeah.
a celebration
Mm-hmm.
of the month or
Yes.
the season, and
Yeah.
you do it, and then it's done.
Exactly. Yeah. And often we have these monthly celebrations, but then nothing changes. So we know that certain populations of people associate differently, they learn differently, they speak differently, they construct knowledge differently. And so to celebrate, I don't know, Native American heritage, but then not acknowledge that historically those groups of people construct knowledge in many, many different ways, and to not allow that knowledge construction into my classroom is problematic. So I can eat your fly bread, and I can do your dance.
Yeah.
But then I cannot allow knowledge as you construct it into this classroom. It feels really problematic to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm really interested in, again, not just this recognition of diversity, but this act of inclusion. I think that that's really important, especially when we look at populations that have been not just historically underserved, but systemically and intentionally underserved.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
You taught me a phrase at the social justice event last year, and I say it now. You've probably seen it in my tweets because I quote you: "Disrupt the system." That is
Yeah.
my favorite, and I think that's part of why you don't like diversity, because it's not
Yeah.
disrupting the system.
Yeah.
Yeah. That diversity bows to status quo.
Right.
So just by its very construction, diversity says, okay, this thing is still in control. It doesn't seek to change status quo. Diversity simply allows others in. And that whole verb of allow, that I allow you to exist by acknowledging you, again, doesn't speak to power. And disruption speaks to power.
With this word,
Yes.
we have several things we can do because I like to do metaphors. It's the weird poet in me. So
Yeah.
the person we interviewed earlier this week, she wanted to tear up the word that annoyed her and tear it to little pieces and throw it in the air. I have, if that seems a little harsh, if we're not ready to really tear this up, I have something else to do with it, but I'm going to leave it up to you. That it does not involve tearing it.
And to go back to the metaphor of Lego, that's not a word that I want to tear up, because that's where a lot of people are right now. And so that's a word that I want to build on. So if I had my Lego pieces out, I would put it on the table and erect something on top of it. Justice.
Okay.
It's so
So
cool.
what we'll do is we won't tear it up because we could, build on it. So
Yes.
if this works, I'll be happy. So we're going to sink it in this water.
Awesome.
What's it?
Well, I hope it's doing something.
Yeah.
Is it doing something?
It is kind of, it's turning into a rainbow. It's dissolving.
Oh, I wondered why it had all those colors.
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay.
And I know it's corny and everything, but we want this to be more than what it is.
Well, and
Yes.
we also
So-
are artistic and silly. in
And we're
our
softening
videos.
it up a bit. We're softening it up,
yeah.
which means that it's going to be stretchy and malleable, and we can work on it.
There
So
you
we're
go.
just going to let it steep over on the side here, and
Excellent.
let it soften up, so we can use it in better ways. So I'm sure you've been warned that part of the serious discussion is playing a game and being ridiculous. So what we have here, and I know I can't tip them up too much, but we've got, I don't know if you can see, there are some cups here.
Yes.
And on the top, there's 6 cups, and on the tops of them are written the numbers 1 through 6. So
Okay.
your job is to pick the numbers in any order. Underneath 3 of the cups are your questions.
Okay.
Underneath the other 3 are the things that you said you did not like the taste of, the texture of, or the smell of. One of each. We take turns submitting ourselves to these things because we don't believe in making our lovely friends and interviewees suffer. And since you're not here, you can't do it anyway. So, but we don't want anybody to see, so we have a mask, a blindfold.
We have to wear this to
Okay.
taste, touch, or smell.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so ready? So all you have to do is
Pick a number,
pick
baby.
a number.
I'm going to go with 3 first. I'm a De La Soul fan. 3 is the magic number.
Okay.
So you lucked out. See,
Why?
my whole goal is to get her to do as many of these as possible.
As many of these.
But the understanding is that if it involves eating, it's my job.
Yeah, she has to do it.
Okay.
I have to do the other 2.
Number 3. It's
Yay!
a question. Okay. Enjoy it.
Check out the rhinestone.
Wow.
I like to take the first rhinestone and make it a third eye for myself.
There is your blue chakra is the chakra of speech. Yes. Creativity.
So, let's see how I do with. Let's see if it helps me. What is your greatest fear? Anything goes from ladybugs to death.
Oh wow. And that's a really complicated question. one of the things, and I guess this is a thing that not very many people know about me. Well, I've just started to write and think publicly about it, but I am the survivor of a civil war. So I grew up in a small country, Liberia, in West Africa, and I'm 40 years old, so that means that I grew up in the late 70s and 80s. And Liberia, for the early part of the 80s, was defined by years of civil conflict.
Yeah.
And so in some very specific and terrifying ways, death was all around me. And so it was something that I grew up around and grew up talking about and processing. And, I have really amazing parents who made sure that I was always understanding, that I could always be heard if I was concerned about a thing. And so I'm oddly in this place where my relationship to death, A, is not Western, and then B, is not defined by fear. And so when I talk about my fears, it's not necessarily death or anything like that. But one of my largest fears, again, derives from that conflict still. I think I'm really, really afraid that people won't change and that we won't learn. And that's why I've kind of become an educator. When things stay the same, it terrifies me, especially when things regarding how we treat each other and how we treat people and how we care for each other and how we seek to understand each other. And so communities where people do things the same way, or communities where people are excluded, or communities where, we look at a problem and we just decide that we're going to live with that problem because that's how it's always been, that's terrifying to me.
Thank you for sharing that, because that actually helps me understand part of what drives you. I remember you saying to me, well, Saturday night, I often work all night. That's my thing. And I was like, really? But now it makes total sense. Even what I see you do with your kids, the way you are with your kids, which I love, it's always there. But now I have a deeper understanding of where it comes from.
Yeah. I always want to be living at the edge of my ability. I always want to be doing the next thing. And I think it's important to sit with things, just like we learn to sit with challenges and to sit with grief, but to learn to sit with fear as well, and to kind of say, I don't have to run from this thing, at least not yet. I'm going to sit next to it and really seek to discover it, or why it scares me, or why it terrifies me, or why it puts me on edge. And I think those things are really important, or at least they've been important for me. And in the moments where I feel myself pushed to do things that I've never done before, the moments where I feel myself pushed to do things that feel career defining for me, it's always those moments that come out of sitting with fear, or sitting with insecurity, or sitting with the thing. Yeah.
It's not just a very poetic image, but it's extremely useful, because you can sit with that which scares you, or makes you uncomfortable, or makes you angry.
Exactly.
And for a lot of us, that is forward progress. That is the challenge, is just being able to sit alongside what makes us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because that's the first step.
Exactly.
It's okay to be afraid. It's not going to hurt you. It doesn't make you weak or a bad person, because in Western culture, as I'm sure you know, fear is really stomped on and looked upon as bad. And one of the things we're trying to do is to break this thought cycle, at least in this country, of fear and then action, as opposed to fear and then, I think I said to you, use it as a way to maybe trigger curiosity about something or someone that's different.
Yeah. And it's interesting, I grew up, here and consuming Western media, and so there's a certain part of the Jedi code, that idea that that idea that fear has this powerfully corrupting influence if we act on it without attempting to understand it at first. And I love your idea of presence, because there's so many different ways to be present. There's a kind of second presence that I'm really trying to cultivate. I always want to be present in my imagination. I think as we age, we are fed these values of what society is, and we lose track of what society can be. We're fed these values of what school is, or what friendship is, or what love is, and I never want to lose sight of what can be. And so when I think about presence, for me it's a dual presence. I want to be present with the two of you, but then I want to be present to what can be, what is, and then I want to draw you into that. I think that that's really important, that the three of us as friends are always thinking about who we are together, but then who we can be, and I think that that's really powerful for me. So I get a lot of joy out of that.
That's so, building on that, as you are an educator and also a father, for example, I'm wondering, do you have a concrete or a tip about if a child or an adult, because it's probably more adults half the time, gets into a situation or faces someone that's very different, or for whatever reason it triggers you, right? It's scary. how do you learn to turn that fear, or to transform, I think that's a better word, your fear into curiosity or openness?
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah, well,
have
we talk
a
about
tip?
it. Like, I think communicating is really important. Like, and it sounds like such a simple answer or a simple act. I have daughters that are 6 and 4, and I am in a mixed race household. So mommy and daddy come from different backgrounds. We have like our African grandma and we have our Ohio grandma. We have all of the Liberian customs that we follow. We have all of the Midwestern customs that we follow. We have all of the cousins with brown skin. We have all of the cousins with like white skin. And so we talk a lot about difference. And I think in some places people say, oh, well, don't talk about that. That person's different, but shh, don't talk about it. Don't mention it. As if it's like polite to name difference. And so we're actually, as a family, quite practiced at naming difference. And so both girls can talk about difference. And we can talk about what it's like to have, Christmas, for example, in Brooklyn where it snows, and they can talk about having an equatorial Christmas where it doesn't snow. They can talk about like, daddy's practices and daddy's customs and daddy's language, and we can talk about mommy's practices and mommy's customs and mommy's language. And then we can actively co-construct what becomes our practices and our language, and I think that that's really, really important. That lots of times people see difference and they're like us, them. But when negotiating friendship, when negotiating family, when negotiating shared community space, we get to redefine and we get to name it our. And I think that that's a really interesting thing, because for historically speaking, that our has been defined by who has power or who has the most guns or who has the most access to the thing. But now moving forward, beginning to reimagine and really think, what can it be like to move forward as our or as us without it being defined by power? And I don't know if that can happen, but I spend a lot of my creative and imaginative energy building toward that anyway.
And I haven't thought of it quite that way before, so thank you for sharing. I mean, this is getting juicy. I'm probably gonna have to watch this video about 100 times.
I've just got all these ideas flying through my head right now, and I mean, we could be here for hours. Because I'm gonna pack them away for writing
for now,
because I'll write about this.
Right.
We should probably choose another cup.
We should,
because we can do it a long time.
Yeah.
So,
but thank you, because that for someone like me who was taught not to talk about differences and just this idea of colorblindness, which I thought was a good thing that I was doing that, and now I'm starting to realize, oh, maybe not. So thank you. This is really helpful for people like me. I don't know what I say.
People?
For me, people.
And so maybe the next show that Warren will have my daughters on and they'll talk about it, like, because they've gotten really good at naming difference. But I think it's important to name without judgment. And so this idea that like you'll often hear my daughter say like, oh, like daddy's brown and that person's brown like daddy. We actually lead a study group at school, and this is my children's school, because a lot of other parents were really interested in our approach to kind of race conscious parenting. And so we lead a study group, my wife and I, at school on raising race conscious children, because a lot of people have been taught, oh, we don't talk about it until the kids are 18, or when the kids notice difference, or when the kids notice disability, or when the kids notice, nationality, or when the kids notice language, we'll just pretend like it doesn't exist. And pretend like it doesn't exist, again, continues to subscribe to the white, able-bodied, male, moneyed norm, and that has gotten us to where we are now, which is incredibly in a place where we can't communicate.
But let's do another number.
All right, pick a
ready?
number, Cornelius. Yeah.
All right, I think I'm going to stick with all the prime numbers, so I'm going to go with 2.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. It's another question. He's just keeping us in suspense. So we got 2, we got 3. I'm going to keep this so I can remind you later if you
The
need it.
terror is building.
Shall I ask this?
Yes.
Do you want that?
Yeah, I know. My other third eye fell off.
I'm sorry. Okay. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Third eye in place?
Is it?
Oh,
It is.
the purple one now. Oh, yeah.
All right. As long as it glitters. All right. Has experiencing fear changed how you respond to different people, ideas, or beliefs?
Absolutely. Experiencing fear has made me more empathetic to folks around me. One of the great fortunes that I've had in life, or the great luxuries that I've had in life, is I've always had the luxury of time, and I've always had the luxury of like thought. And then I've had thought partners. And I realized, and I call those things luxuries because not everybody has those things, that my parents were really intentional about creating space for me to process things that were really hard for me, and they were really intentional to be present with me while I was processing hard things. And so while life was disrupted by many events, I think that I had those 3 luxuries. So when we didn't have money, we had space, we had time, we had each other. And I think that those things are really important. And it's interesting because when one looks at life, like everything that we experience prepares us for the next thing. And so you go through these really like tough things and you're just like, why the hell is this thing happening to me? And then, a year later, 2 years later, a thing happens and you begin to understand like, your life. And so when I was, when I was 19, it was my last year of college. I went to Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, Florida, which is a historically black college. And this was 1999. So this was before we had the language for terrorism, before we had the language for mass shooting. Somebody planted a bomb on our college campus.
Wow.
And I remember at the time, all of my friends being really terrified. And so like kind of this hyperbolized fear. And I remember being supremely calm in that moment. I remember calling my dad, and I explained, Dad, this thing has happened. A lot of my friends are going home, so they're getting flights, they're getting on buses, they're going home. And I think I want to stay here and do some organizing. And my dad, I was waiting for the big no, but my dad was just like, I understand, this is what you were built for. He was just like, everything that has happened in your life up until this point has prepared you for this. It was one of those strange dad things that dads say, and then all of a sudden things become clear. That came out of the experience of fear. Like, had I not been 8 in Liberia, I could not have been 19 in Tallahassee. And so fear has definitely made me more reflective, more empathetic, more ready for things, and I think that that's an important thing to consider, that those of us who experience things that are scary and are blessed enough to have life after the thing that is scary, like, we have a responsibility, and I think that that's really important, so that there are going to be little boys who are traumatized by war after me, and because I've been there first, I get to support them. And there are going to be people who, and even smaller fears, so there are going to be people who absolutely detest Brussels sprouts after me. And because I've been there, I can support them. Again, all of those things have come to me because I've had that luxury of time and space and community. And so, again, those of us who have those things, we have a particular responsibility to those who don't have those things. When I think about community, and when I think about time, all of those things are ultimately liberating tools, because those things keep us free from fear. Those things keep us free from kind of the negative impact of terrorism, of racism, of all of these things that we talk about and think about and worry about, that if we have time to process, we really can be beyond a lot of these things.
It's no mistake that you love Legos.
Yeah.
Because we never, even though we try and we think, oh, I'm done being a teenager, I'm done being a child, thank goodness that's over. You can't just jettison who you were.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that green brick Lego foundation and those first bricks you put on. Even though those first bricks are just basic, whatever red or orange, whatever color you choose, they're down there.
Yeah.
And no matter what you build on top, they're down there. And it's, how we grow from those initial bricks.
Exactly.
That informs us. Well, questions we have. Cups we must number.
Cups we must,
All right, so
that was my attempt.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go number one. I'm going to go number one this time.
Okay.
Oh, this one is a blindfold.
Me blindfold?
Well, I don't know.
Well, is it a taste?
I think it might be me.
Okay.
Okay. So.
Because I'll do the smelling and the touching, but I'm not doing the tasting.
No.
That is a magnificent blindfold.
Isn't that cool? I found it online. All right, you're fine. Just stay there. Don't move your hand.
All right.
Mason.
Oh no.
Don't get too afraid. Do you want me to put one in your hand so you can eat it?
I can smell it.
There you go, buddy.
Really?
Yep.
All of it?
Yeah, bon
I'm
appetit.
so sorry, Christina. I'm so sorry. Oh. I can't watch. I'm so sorry.
I'm not.
I mean, they're entirely not in context with anything.
Right, so they're not so bad.
And the last thing I had was coffee, so. Okay. Culinary people, do not eat a Brussels sprout and drink coffee at the same time.
Okay, that's a good tip.
I'm really sorry that you had to endure that.
I usually like Brussels sprouts, but I just cooked them and I didn't season them, and then they got cold. So it's like a Brussels sprout in its worst form.
See, this is why she has to eat.
Brussels sprout is already in its worst form.
But this is why I make her eat.
Can I take this off?
Yeah, because she will eat pretty much anything, and I will pretty much eat nothing.
Yeah.
So
I really cannot deal with them. Like, I will leave a restaurant over Brussels sprouts.
Seriously? I love that.
No, the good news is she gets to smell my Brussels sprout breath for a while.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's disgusting me out. Is that even a whatever? I'm making stuff up today.
Right, left.
Pick another number, please.
So I think I'm going to go with number 5 this
Number
time.
5.
I have a feeling
it's yours.
Yeah.
I like how you were just ready.
Yeah. Well.
But she knows how this works.
Okay. Is it a? Uh-oh.
It's a feel.
Oh God! But Cornelius made a.
This is harrowing.
Poke in or put it in your hand. I suggest we put it in your hand.
Oh,
Put your hand over here. Okay. And I'm going to pour it. I know. Well,
You're gonna pour it?
I am. Okay.
Ew! Pour.
Okay. Don't move.
What is this? Is it sand? Is
Now
it
put your
quinoa?
other hand on top.
Is
Okay,
it
now you
soft?
stop before you lose things.
What is it?
That texture weirds me out.
What is it?
Can I tell her?
I still don't know what it is.
It's sand.
It is sand.
Dump it on the tray.
Yeah, one of the hardest things for me to deal
beaches
with.
are not your
Used to
thing.
surf a lot. So I've spent quite a bit of time surfing, and actually Liberia has some of the best surfing in the world because of how the Atlantic currents go.
I've heard that.
And a lot of time, and when you surf, you pack your little lunch and you leave everything on the beach, and then you go out, and then you come back like an hour or 2 hours later to come get your lunch. But then sometimes sand makes its way into your sandwich. So there's nothing worse on this planet than turkey sandwich with really nice cheese.
Open up.
With sand.
She would too.
Well, for Cornelius, I would.
Yeah, but you would just spit it on me, so I want to avoid that.
And so I've eaten many a turkey sandwiches, many a peanut butter jelly sandwiches, many a fish tacos, where it's got this nice kind of sandy aftertaste. Yeah.
So you don't mind it on your feet, right? Like walking.
I love
in
it on my
stuff.
feet. I love it on my arms. I believe in full exfoliation, just not in my mouth.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing where you pack your picnic lunch and you're looking forward to it all day. So you're out surfing and you're like, wow, when I get back to that turkey sandwich, it's going to be amazing. And then you get back and it's still amazing,
It's just
just with
crunchy.
sandy aftertaste. Yeah.
We got 4 and 6.
All right, so I've exhausted all the prime numbers, so I'm going to go with the perfect square, 4.
Okay.
God, I don't even remember
It
prime
is
numbers.
a question, and it's your turn.
So Cornelius,
Mm-hmm.
why do we feel fear?
Why do we feel fear? Fear is, it's evolutionary. It's in our biology. At one point in our evolutionary history, if you leave the cave, there's a saber-toothed tiger that's going to kill you. And so your body needs either an electronic or a glandular response to that. I think that, it's to keep us safe from the saber-toothed tiger that wanted to kill us. And so, we need fear because fear keeps us safe. Africans have a saying, too far east is west. And this idea that, we absolutely need fear to keep us safe, but then too much fear makes you incompatible with other humans. And so it's that idea that, my biological response to things that want to kill me, fear is important, and there are things that threaten to kill us. There is extreme weather, and there's, animals and falling trees and all those things. So we need to be able to respond to those things. But when our lives become governed by those things, I think that's when we run into problems. So.
And I think we're living in times where that is becoming ever more obvious.
And this just whole idea that, many of the things that people have manufactured for us to fear are A, not real, or B, being used to manipulate us into doing the things that other folks want us to do.
When I was 30, I had a therapist who was very helpful and was the first person who taught me fear can be misused. But it was really cool to understand that this visceral reaction may be, pardon my français, BS. I mean, if it's not a lion or a gun or certain things in front of you, it's just this made up stuff. And this is our question, maybe I'll just ask it. How do you think fear intersects with acceptance?
Well, fear was specifically manufactured to keep people oppressed. I got a chance to go and study the Brown decision in Topeka, Kansas.
Wow.
So I spent some time in Topeka studying that whole movement, and part of the study was talking to people who were there. This was 60 years ago. I study things, I work at a university, and so I look at primary sources, and so just looking at newspapers from the time, so newspapers from the early 50s, and people had no problem being photographed protesting the integration of schools. So you have people who are on the front page of newspapers spitting on children or kicking children down the stairs, and they're still alive, so you can go talk to them. And so you were like, hi, you were on the cover of this paper doing this thing, and here's me, Mr. Researcher, 50, 60 years later, talking to you about this thing that you were very public about. And the role of fear in that was profound, that people would say, don't go around those people because those people are scary. So scary becomes the ideology that allows you to spit on their children. Scary becomes the ideology that allows you to kick them down the stairs. But the people who told you that those folks were scary are the ones pulling the puppet strings, you know. And so when we think about the role of fear and acceptance, fear has been used to cultivate the opposite of acceptance, exclusion. Fear has been used to cultivate hate. Fear has been used to cultivate those things. And it's been an intentional curation. You know, it is no accident that when women started owning more and more businesses, people started making things up. Well, they're irrational and they're this and they're that. You know, and so that is a calculated and intentional thing to create fear that would lead to exclusion, so that people, you know, who own businesses can, you know, quote unquote, get their businesses back or whatever. And so when you look at who is feared in society, like, you can often trace that back to two things. You can trace that back to capital, and people wanting control of capital, and you know, and historically speaking, that has been, again, is the people who've always held capital, you know, and you can trace that back to exclusion. That, like, the people who we are generating all this fear about, like, run the risk of being included, and if they're included, I might lose money, I might lose real estate, I might lose control. Fear has been kind of a surgical tool used to keep people divided. And to keep certain people in power.
If you don't mind, just briefly, did you talk to some of those people, and had they changed at all?
You know, there's
you talking to them too. Let's just be honest. There's not a white face in front of them.
There's a myth that racism decreases over time. And that is a myth, and that does not happen. Racism does not decrease over time. Racism bends and morphs and attaches itself to the prevailing norms, and so it looks different over time. But people do change. I've always believed in people, like, and I've always believed in people's ability to learn things and do things. But sometimes our ability to change and get better is stunted by regret. And so sometimes you meet people who have done horrible things, and they're still living in the regret. And so they haven't been able to transition over into the reflection or the improvement or all of the other things.
I think of that.
Yeah.
And how people are now 60, 70, 80 years old. You hope that racism and intolerance and everything that went into those events would change. It's very distressing that it doesn't.
But you know, it's that calls to mind Tupac's idea of thug life, you know, that, like, Angie Thomas popularized in her book. But that notion in the early 90s that, like, the young people we knew, you know, because that was very much my generation when we were consuming that music. So I can remember myself in 1992, 1993, kind of like post LA riots, Tupac and that whole movement. We were onto something then, and we're just now beginning to study that idea that you feed kids this fear so that you can keep people excluded, and then that fear comes back and kills us generation later. Like, you know, people kind of have been doing lots of thinking about our current political moment, and it didn't come out of nowhere. That came out of, you know, when we think about Ronald Reagan feeding people fear, like that this will be the guy that comes to your house and kills you, you know, that we're going to have this war on drugs so that we can incarcerate all those bad black people and take their fathers away from them, you know, so those are seeds that are planted, and then you get a Donald Trump, you know, and then you get a Muslim ban, and then you get you know, and so part of my pedagogy is, like, you know, like Tupac talked about the hate you give, and so, like, what kind of love are we given is a really kind of big thing that I'm thinking about. So what seeds are we planting now? And I think that's why it's so imperative and urgent, and that's kind of why I always feel like I'm always moving, I'm always doing things, because we kind of don't have time.
We have to plant those seeds as far and wide and deeply as possible.
All right, hold on, because I know what I have to do.
This is the last challenge.
This is the last challenge, yeah.
I'm afraid of this one because I kind of know what's coming now.
You know what it is? I should be afraid? Oh, great. All right, go ahead.
No, this is horrible.
I don't like Cornelius' reaction now. I'm actually kind of worried. What the hell are you doing? Oh my God, what the hell? What is it? What is it? Ew.
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
You want to get your nose right up in there?
Oh.
I don't know. Oy. It's like sulfury, rotteny. What is it? It smells like rotten eggs mixed with rotten meat or... Oh no, it's cat food. Is it
You're
cat
exactly
food?
right. Oh my, I cannot.
Take your blanket
Annie, like,
off.
you're my favorite person now that you endured this for me.
I didn't even choose a fishy one. It's turkey.
Yeah, see, I hate fish. She knew I'd really lose it. It's still pretty gross, though.
Yeah,
This is how much we love you, Cornelius.
and I'm returning the love right now. This is me returning the love, because, like, that could never be me.
Well, we know you have a walk to go on. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we throw all the love at you for joining us today?
This has just been extraordinary. I just want to thank the two of you for the work that you're doing. I think it's really important that we don't work in isolation. And just like watching the two of you on my screen for the last hour is just a testament to the power of community. And I just really appreciate like who you are, what you stand for, what you're doing. It's so important. I visit so many communities where people are afraid to actively pursue the things that come to them in their dreams, and so to watch you two doing that in real time over Skype is just a beautiful thing. So thanks.
Oh, well, all
but
of
you're
that.
gonna make me cry.
Now she's crying.
Yeah.
All of that, absolutely back at you. You're just this wonderful, warm voice for growth and acceptance, and we just love you, and thank you so much for the work you do.
Yeah, really, thank you. Sorry.
Gonna get a tissue. And
Thanks.
have a wonderful day with your beautiful family.
All right, take care.
Thank you, Cornelius. Bye-bye.
Bye.